Hello and welcome to our weekly share on the Pasha with the commentary of the Alshach. Although I have to tell you that I've decided, as you'll see when we get into the share, that it would be very nice if we made the theme that we're in now, which is the journey from Passover to Shavuot, which is, of course, the geographic and the spiritual journey the Jewish people took after they left Egypt. So that's going to be the theme running through the next few weeks. So I hope you'll enjoy that, and it will be obviously pertinent to all of us. Couple of announcements. It is, for those who watch the share on Torah Anytime, I just can't express my gratitude enough for Torah Anytime for allowing me over many years. In fact, I know it's 18 years to have my share appear on their platform. And they're having their annual fundraiser on the 26th and 27th of May. So that's very soon. And they've asked me, invited me, given me the honor of helping raise funds for them. And I'm trying to raise $10,000, along with but many of the other Rabbonim and Torah Anytime, trying to raise funds so that all the Torah that's spread through Torah Anytime can continue and increase what they do, the volume of what they do. So if you're connected to me by any chance through Facebook, you'll see a link there. If you go to Torah Anytime, their page, you'll be able to connect to my page. I would be extremely grateful if you help me to do something I'm extremely bad at, which is fundraising. That'd be very nice. Let's say $10,000. It's about 100 people give me $100, something like that. Anyway, anybody who can help with any tzedakah money, that would be very, very grateful. And I'll keep reminding you of that. But again, it's very hard to think of the Jewish world before Torah Anytime. So much Torah has been spread. I think in these days, the more we can, the better it's for all of us. That's my first thing. Second of all, it's as usual for Uriah Chaim and Hannah Yehudis, who should have a refuah shalema. Rafal Chai Ben Sora should have a refuah shalema. Yehuda David Ben Leah should have a refuah shalema. You want to remember. I think that'll do. Oh, there is, I know somebody in Manchester, very, very close to me, and we often go and get ourselves, have a schmooze at Costa Coffee, which is sort of like a Starbucks in England. Don't know if it's anywhere outside England. And when I was at Manchester Airport a couple of weeks ago, I saw this when I was getting myself a Costa Coffee. It's a Costa Coffee. It's a keyring. And so for my good friend, who I've nicknamed Costa, and he doesn't seem to be annoyed about that, in case you're watching this, I did promise you I've got it, so there it is. And my son, Ari Leib, is coming on Monday to spend a week with me, which is a delight. And so I've now got something to bring it back to you. So that's something to look forward to. A Costa Coffee, and you won't put on any calories from this cup of coffee. That's good stuff too. Anything else to say? No, let's go straight into the share. Okay, so it says in the Haggadah, and this was just a BQ, but remember, we're counting the Omer. It's a continuum. It's a little bit like the chain I just showed you in that keyring. Every day is linked to the other day, and we're counting as we go along. Today is the 10th day of the Omer, just in case you missed that one out. So it's 10th day of the Omer, but of course we're counting 49 days, which takes us to Mount Sinai. They're linked together. Hashem says, I'm only taking you out from Egypt in order to bring you to Mount Sinai and give you the Torah. There's a purpose to this. The Pesach journey on its own was not just let my people go, as they used to say in the 1960s, and not actually specify where they're going and what they're going to or for. Anyway, so that's the journey we're on just now. And interestingly, in the Haggadah, you remember this, just Haggadah, we just said it, just a week or so ago, we said, B'kol dor v'dor, in every generation, Chayav Odom, a man is obliged, and a woman, Liras Asasma, to see themselves, Ki'iluhu Yotzim Mitzrayim, as though you went out from Egypt. So this is a continual mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to remember the Exodus and see yourself as though you're going through the Exodus. Now, notice it doesn't say at the Seder night, reading the Haggadah, you've got to see yourself as though you're going out from Egypt, which of course we reenact. So you might think that's what it's saying. No, it's saying in every generation, all the time, you've got to see yourself like that. And if that's the case, as a mitzvah, which is a mitzvah to me, is a continuum mitzvah, is certainly how we're supposed to be seeing ourselves in these linked days leading up to Shavuot, when the purpose of the Exodus is going to be fulfilled. We've got to see yourself as they're going out from Egypt. Okay, now what they did there was they transformed themselves from a people who were sunk and seeped into the depths of idolatry to being people worthy of standing in Mount Sinai and get the Torah. So therefore, we've got a line of basically a continual line. In fact, I often used to draw this for my students on the smartboard. Notice I used the word smartboard. Of course, when I started out, it was a blackboard. And then it became a whiteboard, which I thought was very nice. One of my yeshivas I teach, and they still have whiteboards, but most have smartboards. I just want you to know how up to date I am. So here, a blank sheet of paper. Now, if I just take a ruler, this is very high tech, and with a pen, it just happens to be lying here, fortunately enough, draw a graph. So there is one vertical line, one horizontal line, and one diagonal line. And I make halfway along the line a 0. I hope that you can see this. I just drew that. Isn't that incredible? Yes, it goes the wrong way, doesn't it? So basically, here's a 0. Going down this line at the corner, that's the 50th level. It's the 50 in this. There's 50 levels going up and 50 levels going down. In this this corner here, that's the 50th level. That's the level at which Jews are really in trouble. And if we got to that level, we weren't going out from Egypt. Simple as that. Now we're going to travel from here along this horizon. It's very hard to do this. I'll do it that way so I can see what we're doing. Along this line, and we're going to come to a mountain called Sinai. Should really be up at the top, but you get the idea. In which we're going to get the Torah. Just made a little triangle. In which we're going to get the Torah. So therefore, we've got a line going up. Now, the obvious thing is that's nonsense. It wasn't a nice straight line. In fact, we saw, when we read about this just recently, there are many a rebellion on that road to Mount Sinai, many a lack of trust in the process that we're involved in, many a lack of trust in the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu, and dare I say it, much a lack of trust in Hashem Yisbarach, in God Himself. So basically, on this journey, there's many. The line is actually a wiggly line. From the bottom to Mount Sinai is a wiggly line, a bit like an oscilloscope, maybe a heart monitor or something like that. We had pitfalls and we had peaks and troughs, ups and downs. 3 days after the Exodus, no water. Oh, why did we going to see? We don't want to be here. This is a continuum that takes us from the Exodus to Mount Sinai, but it's also a continuum. It's also a graph, the wiggly line of our lives. We have ups and we have downs. As long as you're learning from the downs, that magnifies and amplifies the ups. That's the general idea of the Exodus. We're going up, but we will stumble on our journey as we go along, till we come to a point of certainty. Bitachon means certainty. Okay, and of course that's what Moshe Rabbeinu, you can see in the dialogue all the way through. When they've got their backs to the sea, Egyptian army coming towards them, they panic, they scream out to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says, "Look, you can see them now. I promise you won't see them anymore. After tomorrow, they're done." But for them to be able to get to that level of trust, that took quite a lot of work, and that's the process we're engaged in now, a process of going up. Okay, now here's an interesting thing. If you remember saying it should be fresh in our memories, the reading of the Haggadah, of course, there are 2 mitzvahs which are stated from the Torah that we should say, or we should do, on the Seder night. One is the telling of the story from Yetziat Mitzrayim, and the other one is the eating of the matzah. All the other things they do are rabbinic mitzvahs, add-ons, if you like. But the Torah core mitzvahs are eating matzahs and the telling of the story, Magid, the telling of the story of the going out from Egypt. Now, of course, every mitzvah we do is predicated by a bracha, like a blessing. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, God, King of the universe, who has commanded us to, whatever it is, put on tefillin, tzitzis, like candles, whatever. So as we're about to do a mitzvah from the Torah, the midst of telling the story from going out from Egypt, of course, we should start off by saying, Baruch atah Hashem, again, Asher Kashana, be sanctified as mitzvahs, and has commanded us, I'll see pre see Mishram, did in the midst of telling the story from Egypt. But there is no blessing at the beginning of this. And that's peculiar. Why not? So somebody called the Chasam Sofer, the great Chasam Sofer, great Hungarian rabbi, he says, interestingly, if we're taking it seriously as though we're seeing ourselves, and every generation seeing yourself as though you're going out from Egypt, then in doing this mitzvah, if you're really seeing yourself as though you're there, you're not yet Jewish, or not yet Jewish as you and I are today. The Jewish people were on a journey which was a pre-Jewish journey. They were somebody asked this just recently, was Avraham Avinu Jewish? Was Yitzhak and Yaakov Jewish? Because we only became a nation at Mount Sinai, that's true. We were the Jewish people before Mount Sinai. We became the Jewish nation at Mount Sinai. The difference, a people might just be like a small tribe, but a nation usually has a national constitution, a national set of laws, etc. We got those at Mount Sinai. We therefore had a form, a direction at Mount Sinai that we should have moved on to straight away, which have been straight into the land of Israel. Anyway, basically, that's us. We're on that journey of transformation to become a Jewish people. Fine. Now, if we're not yet Jewish, and we're seeing ourselves as though we're going there, and we're not quite yet Jewish, we can't say Baruch atah Hashem. Let's say your King, Lord King of the universe, has commanded us by his mitzvah, because we've not yet accepted the Torah, we've not accepted the commandments, the 613 commandments. If you're seeing yourself as though you're there, you're not quite Jewish yet. So he says a very interesting thing. He says the laws of Hilchos Gerus, which will be, if I can get all this in one week, all the things I have to tell you, said he quickly looking down at his pile of Jewish books. Then when it talks about the laws of Gerim, the culmination of the conversion process for a man or a woman, for a man obviously is after Bris Milah, then he goes to the mikveh, for a woman obviously goes to the mikveh. It's when you're standing in the water. Now, normally when a woman goes to the mikveh, let's say on a monthly basis, she's going to make that blessing. She's about to do a mitzvah. She makes a blessing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Shekashem al tefillah, who's commanded me to go to the mikveh, to dip under the water. So somebody who's not Jewish, who's about to become Jewish, how does he do that? Because he can't make the bracha. Because he or she is not Jewish. How can he, who has commanded me by your mitzvahs? No, he hasn't. When you're Jewish, you're commanded to do it. Jewish post Mount Sinai, but Jewish pre-Mount Sinai, you're not commanded to do anything yet. So what happens? So the halakha is very interesting here. It's in actual fact, it says what you do is the person dips down twice. I think it's twice. Comes out, then makes the blessing. I think, or dips down once. Comes out, then makes the blessing and dips down another 2 times. You've dipped down, you're now Jewish, now you can make the blessing, and then you dip down another 2 times. If we're seeing ourselves as when you're out from Egypt, this is a very similar process. You can't make the blessing before you're Jewish, but at the end of doing the mitzvah of Magid, then of the telling the story of the going out from Egypt, then there's a blessing. Yargol is Avasena, who redeemed us, etc. That last blessing is when we can make it at the end of the story. So here we're not quite Jewish yet, going to Mount Sinai. And therefore, we are all, says the Chasam Sofer, effectively pre-Jews, or Gerim, if you like. That's the analogy which he draws on. Okay, fine. So we're in a repeating process of what happened in the journey from Passover to Mount Sinai. At this stage of the journey, day 10 of the Omer, or day 10 of the journey, if you like, we're not yet fully Jewish. So therefore, the model we're using is of being Gerim, of being people who are about to become Jewish. Now, it's interesting. In any journey, you need a guide. And of course, the guide that we had was Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, following his map, looking at the Torah's account of this, would take us or allow us to repeat the journey. We've got all sorts of historic things, walking in the footsteps of the Civil War, or the English Civil War, or the First World War. People do that. They follow in the paths that the armies trod in previous centuries or millennia. So we're doing exactly the same thing. But there was an alternative guide or guidebook apart from the Torah's journey, leading us on the journey to Mount Sinai, and that is the one that we read at Shavuot, which is the story of Ruth. And Ruth, of course, is a convert. So Ruth being or convertess, Ruth being a convert is a parallel track with parallel insights into the process that the Jewish people are supposed to see themselves as being in now. So there's a lot to learn from the story. Fine. Does that make sense so far? Said he, pausing. I hope you're with me. Good. Fine. So let me tell you a quote from you, our first book. This is the Gemara. This is the Talmud. Talmud is in page, as you've almost big Memches 48b, Memches on the base. And here you'll find something very, very interesting. I'm just trying to work out my timing here. Gosh, we've been going for quite a while. I don't think I might get all this finished this week. So as there is a continuing thing, we're on a journey. So this will probably end up with a question. But anyway, let's see. The Talmud asks an incredibly interesting question. Listen to this. If I can find the place, of course, be even better. Yeah, got it. Tanya, we've learned in a thing called a brisa, part of the Talmud. Tanya, Rabbi Chanina ben Oishel Rabbi Gamliel, Omer, Rabbi Chanina, who was the son of Rabbi Gamliel, he says, why do Gerim suffer in these days and go through tough times? It's a bit. The question seems to be predicated on the fact that the Torah says that Hashem has got a special place in his heart for Gerim. In fact, there is no mitzvah that's repeated as many times in the Torah as to love the ger. Says the Gemara in Bava Basra and Daf Yud, if I remember correctly, Tes or Yud. I should have checked that out. Bad educator. Then it says there that the mitzvah of loving the ger is repeated 36 times in the Torah. No mitzvah comes close. On the penny says 46 times. So therefore, there seems to be that Gerim have a special place in the heart of Hashem. Why then should they go through suffering? So here, the Gemara is going to propose a series of answers, and some are accepted and some are rejected. So here's the first one. So he says, why do they suffer? And terrible things happen to them. Because in their previous state, when there were non-Jewish people, and non-Jewish people are obligated, the same way as Jews are obligated to keep 613 mitzvahs, non-Jewish people are obligated to keep 7 mitzvahs, the 7 Noachite commandments. And apparently, if they're suffering after they become Jewish, it means that they were not observant of their responsibilities and their moral duties before they were Jewish. And that would explain why they're suffering. Rabbi Yossi, so that's the answer that Rabbi Hanina gives. Rabbi Yossi strongly disagrees. Omer, don't we say that a ger, a non-Jewish person, becomes Jewish, is considered as though he or she is a completely new person? Like a child who's just been born, and therefore you're cut off from the previous life that you had. And so, therefore, so rejecting that suggestion, he offers his own idea. So the halakhic position is indeed that a ger is completely seen as being a new person. Halachically, primary, I should say, the primary halakhic means that a brother and sister who both became gerim could marry each other halachically, with halakhic permission, because they're two new people. Now, the rabbis banned that for lots of obvious reasons, I suppose. But at least it introduces you to the concept that they're a completely new person. That's the halakhic position. It's interesting, the previous position seems to echo more the Kabbalistic position. They're being punished from things they did in a previous life, and that's an important idea we're going to come back to very shortly. Why do they suffer? So Rabbi Yossi gives a very pragmatic reason. Why do they suffer? And bad things happen to them? Because as they're late starters, they're not as well equipped to not make mistakes in their Jewish observance as somebody who was a baby from the get-go, Jewish from the get-go when they were a baby. And therefore they might make mistakes with mystical or whatever consequences. That suffering is an indication, this goes into the whole idea of tzaddik baraloi. Sometimes something goes wrong in your life, sometimes you suffer in your life. It's an indication you've done something wrong. It's a pointer. And therefore, that's a very pragmatic reason. Therefore, Abba Chanan, another opinion, Omer, Meshum Rebbe Loza, in the name of Rebbe Loza, Lefisha Ein Oisin Mahava Elim Yira. Another opinion says they suffer because we're talking about people who converted to Judaism for the wrong reasons, out of fear of the consequences of not being Jewish. Maybe a Jewish army is approaching the city. Maybe we'll throw our lot in with them and become Jews, but for the wrong reason, not out of love for Judaism. Another pragmatic reason. But then that would be shifting it to a particular category of Gerim suffering. But then here's the critical thing. Then Acherim Omrim and other opinions say they're not identified by name, because they tarried, they delayed joining and bringing themselves underneath the wings of the Almighty. And that's and to back that up, we have a statement by Rabbi Vua in the name of Rabbi Hanina. My Korah, what does the Apostle say? When Boaz said to Rus, remember, Rus, Yishalom Hashem Polech, but he miskortech Shalema, Hashem should reward what you've done, and your reward should be great. Me'im Hashem from Hashem, Eli Yisrael Asher Bo Lachasas V'Gara. These, that refers to the fact that Jews who were very quick, as are not converts, who became Jewish very quickly, as speedily as they could, they get the reward. We're talking about Ruth. She became Jewish as quickly as possible. And the converse is also true. Somebody who was going to become Jewish and delayed, then they're punished for delaying. Now, that's obviously extraordinarily problematic because a non-Jewish person is not obliged to become Jewish. So what does it mean that they delayed? So remember rightly, the Rashba says it's because, you're right, somebody who's not Jewish, when they became Jewish, that's when the clock started. That's when they became like a newborn child. What delay is possible? So he says, well, once they decided to become Jewish and were convinced that this was right, and that's what they should do, it's if they tarried after that, they delayed after that in becoming Jewish, then that's when they are in trouble. That's, he says, what it means. Interestingly, if that's the case, that the reason that somebody who's a ger suffers is because they didn't do it speedily enough, and that's from the moment of their decision, what about Ruth? What about Ruth? What about Ruth herself? So the Tosfos discusses this. I'm not going to get into the Tosfos; it'll take too much time. Tosfos, the commentator on the Gemara, just here, the very bottom one opinion says that if really she was Eglon's daughter, going way back, she was 200 years old in the story, and that's quite a delay. But leaving that aside, that from the moment that she marries Machlon, that's the story of Ruth, right? There was somebody called Elimelech, and his wife was Nomi, and their two sons, Machlon and Bechilion, etc. When Ruth marries Machlon, and Orpah marries Chilion, and then they die. The father dies. There's then a 10-year delay, and then their husbands die. And after that, then Ruth becomes Jewish. That's a 10-year delay. So that doesn't speak so well of her, does it? No. Now, at that point, you have to pause and consider this concept a little bit more profoundly, the concept of joining the Jewish people. Because Rabbi Dessler says something incredibly interesting. I don't know if I've shared this with you before. I find this a very exciting idea. But basically, Rabbi Dessler says in his Haggadah the following thing. He starts by quoting somebody called Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. And he says an interesting mystical idea. If a husband and wife want to come together to conceive a child, and they want that child to make a great contribution to the world, they have ambitions that the child not necessarily becomes Jewish, right? may have no concept of Jews, but they want a child who is a moral, ethical, good person. They might have, it might be that there's a possibility that will bring into a non-Jewish child a Jewish soul. This goes together, as Rabbi Desta begins by quoting the Arizal, who says, no Jew ever abandoned Judaism and embraced another religion. And no convert actually ever became Jewish. Really? No. If somebody converts, they always were a Jewish soul, but inside a non-Jewish body. Conceived by a non-Jewish couple, brought up as a non-Jew, but there was a Jewish soul in there waiting to get out. Now, let's read to you what Rabbi Dessa says. Modern Shabbat Israelis. So as we said, if we've got two non-Jewish people bringing together the possibility of a new physical life, then it might be they'll bring down a Jewish soul. That Jewish soul was already in this world, and it has now, it's been nigzer, it's been created in heaven that soul can only re-enter the world and recommence its journey through a non-Jewish family, a non-Jewish nation, besur oinish al maisim haroim hakaitni, as a punishment for what he or she did wrong as a Jew in their previous life as a Jew. And the implication, the way that Rabbi Dessa writes is that they did something really very, very big. As it were, they're scraping the barrel in heaven. They can't find a reason to send this person back to have another shot at redemption and repairing the damage they did or achieving what they failed to achieve in a previous life. And so the only way they can do it, because it's so bad, is to give him or her a chance to fight their way back. And that fight is as a non-Jew. Now, if that's true, then this makes a very interesting postscript or insight, gives us an insight into our piece of Gemara. Because the Gemara says, why should a non-Jew suffer? Because the non-Jew is going to suffer because the non-Jew coming to this world should have converted more speedily. And with our little explanation, that means that from the moment they discovered Judaism, they decided to become Jewish, they should have done it straight away, but they dragged their feet. Well, that's an interesting idea, an idea which comes up a lot in Judaism. I think I've shared this idea with you before. King David says in Psalm 90, that a man's life will be 70 years. And maybe 80 years. Of course, today it's a little bit different, but anyway, that's the average. I don't know if you've considered exactly how many days is 70 years. It is 25,567 and a half days. 25,567 and a half days. Doesn't sound a lot. That's if you get 70 years. When you get to the age of 20, you're not punished for anything you've done wrong in heaven up until 20. That's, as it were, your apprenticeship. You're expected to make mistakes and learn from those troughs and peaks that we talked about before. But after 20, we generally accept that you should have been and should be equipped well enough to be able to account for yourself and not make mistakes. Then you will be rewarded or punished accordingly. And when you get to be 20 years of age, well, you've used quite a lot of your 25,567 and a half days. You've only got 18,262 and a half days left. 18,262 and a half days. That doesn't seem a long time. That's when you're 20. And when you're 40, you've got 10,957 and a half days. When you're 60, by definition, you've got 3,652 and a half days. That's 70. You might get an extension to get to 80, which would be another 3,652 and a half days. And if you're in your mid-60s, as I am, the figure looks very small indeed. We are all given a set amount of time. We're on a journey. We're on a journey of 7 weeks, but it's interesting that the journey is linked to time. It's 7 weeks precisely, 49 days. But in actual fact, we're on a journey of 25,567 and a half days. Or at the age of 20, as I said, 18,262 and a half days. And you've got to put right what you did wrong in a previous life or achieve what you failed to achieve in a previous life. And Ramatasiel Solomon, one of my great teachers many years ago in Gates of Yeshiva, said, we've all been here before. That's a fundamental of Judaism, reincarnation. You're here to put that right. You've got a set amount of time. Maybe it's 70 years, maybe it's 80 years, maybe it's longer, maybe it's less. And you've got that amount of time to put that right. Suppose you don't do it. Suppose you slept out. Suppose you could have put it right, but you delayed. Then if the time is you've wasted time, how can you achieve what you're supposed to achieve? Maybe God will send you some suffering. Because as we all know from experience, that sometimes you achieve greatness through tough times and discover strengths within yourself you would never know if you were undisturbed and had a peaceful and tranquil life. That's what it's talking about here as well. It's talking about the Ger may have to suffer if they don't do it as quickly as possible. It's not a punishment as in, oh, wow, you did that. No, it means there's a deficit in your account. What you were sent back to achieve, you were given 25,567 and a half days, or whatever the figure is going to be. But you've wasted 5 years of that. You had the idea to become Jewish, and now you didn't. Wow. Oh, how can we help you achieve that? Maybe you'll go through financial suffering or health suffering or suffering for somebody else, vicarious suffering, which will speed up the process in order for you to be able to achieve what you have to achieve. Now, I'm running out of time, in fact, so I'm going to go back to this next week. I've got a lot more to tell you about this, and we're going to go into some really interesting stories and Kabbalistic places, which I think you'll enjoy. But obviously the message is that if we are replicating that journey, then, as they say in Latin, carpe diem, grab the moment, or as they say in Yiddish, chaperein, grab the moment. It's a beautiful idea, you know, and very often when a boy gets engaged, the father of the bride will buy the boy a gold watch. A gold watch. Now, I've got one of these nice Apple Watches, and you can program it to do, I like hands, because somebody once told me a very nice thing, a watch with hands, or a clock, which has got hands, not only does it tell you the time now, but it tells you how much time you've got to go and how much time you've already lost. That's much more important than just a number, because that's just focusing on the present. But when you see 25,567 and a half days and how much has already elapsed, how little you've got left, it motivates you to change. So the Jewish people have got 7 weeks. In this case, instead of 49 days, we now got 39 days, 10 days have gone, to, as it were, create that transformative experience. And we're supposed to replicate that all the time. We're in a pre-Jewish mode. And there's things to do in order to achieve that. I've taken on as a project between this Pesach and Shavuot, because he said there's a way, you know, these troughs and peaks we're talking about, Shlomo Volba, he says it's a way to maximize the peaks and minimize the troughs. Because it's inevitable you make mistakes, as long as you're analyzing what went wrong. But there's a way to keep the, as it were, the excitement going, and that's if you discover something new. So I set myself a new project. Did you know that the 10 Psalms, from Psalm 90 to Psalm 100, were written by Moshe Rabbeinu and not David HaMelech? And when were they given or taught by Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people? Before we got the Torah, at this stage in the journey that we're on. That's when he taught them. So I thought, well, this is critical. This is not Moshe in the Chumash. This is Moshe as a teacher, as a rabbi, telling the Jewish people some fundamental stuff. And I don't know that very well. Say it sometimes, but I don't know it very well. So that's my project at the moment. I'm studying those. I want to master deeply those ideas. Something new gets you going. Oh, and it's incidentally, at this time, the number 1 of the 10 is Psalm 90. And that's where it says a man's life 70 years or 80 years. The theme of the first one is time. It fits perfectly. Time. We've only got a short space of time to get to Mount Sinai. You only get a short space of time on this planet. You've got to maximize. Grab it now. Don't require them to send you a little dollop of suffering into your life in order for you to take your life seriously and your potential seriously. Do it now. Chaperein, carpe diem. So for me, that's the journey that I'm on during this journey from this year's Pesach to Shavuot. You might want to think of one yourself to keep it going. And of course, as I mentioned before, Torah anytime has got a gazillion shiurim you can look at and find something that you like. But I want to finish this shiur as the first stage of our journey, our map, plotting our weekly shiur to Mount Sinai. I'll come back to this next week. I want to tell you more about Ruth, more mystical ideas that got us there, and a little bit more about time. I wish you all a wonderful Shabbos. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Good Shabbos.